How do I get more leads?
How do I stand out in my market?
Is it unprofessional to talk about my kids on Instagram?
Should I have one account or two?
Do I really need a personal brand as a real estate agent?
We are the Modern Agent Marketing Girls. We are two agents turned marketing experts who believe you can become the go-to real estate girl in your market, all because you are you. I'm Chelsea Peterson, founder and CEO of Modern Agent Social Club.
And I'm Kayla Fox, Modern Agent's content creator. Let us be your guides as we talk about what it means to market your real estate business the modern way.
So refill your favorite beverage, open your notes app, and get ready to build a business and a brand you're obsessed with. Let's go. Hey, Kayla.
Hey, Chelsea. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Girls podcast.
And happy Valentine's week.
I know. We're very festive in the studio today. For those of us that are watching on YouTube, I've got my little heart sweater, and I have this cute little heart mug that I found.
Oh my gosh, that's cute.
Yes, so fun.
I almost used I have like the Anthropologie, those icon glasses. I have Valentine's ones.
Oh.
And they're so cute, but I didn't feel like iced coffee right now. So I have because it's like 0 degrees here. So I have my hot coffee and like a pinkish.
Yes, that's super cute. And I love your necklace.
Thank you. I love Hunter Primo on Instagram. She has like the cutest, most like funky style. Like I feel like my favorite outfits are when I pair together the most random things and they just go. Yeah. But I can't do it on a daily basis. She can do it on a daily basis, and she started wearing this necklace, and I'm like, I need that.
Well, it's the week of Valentine's Day. Do you guys ever like do anything fun for Valentine's Day?
Well, our latest tradition for the last 4 years probably has been we get McDonald's cheeseburgers, which is like my secret obsession, even though I try not to eat them.
Yeah.
And then we'll open a really good bottle of red wine. Like typically Scribe is our go-to. But this year I just started this big health protocol. So I'm not eating gluten, dairy, alcohol, anything for the next 3 months. I'm not sure what we're doing this year.
We don't really typically do much. Usually it's because my husband's also an athletic director, and so he's covering like a basketball game or something. And so we've just never made that big of a deal about it. I do have a funny story to share about our first Valentine's Day, though, because it's really funny. But before I do that, I just wanted to remind our listeners that they can leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. And because it's Valentine's Day, we decided we were going to give them some love in return. So do you want to tell them a little bit about how to leave a review and how to get something from us?
Yes, good idea. So we got one review already without asking for any, which is amazing. So thank you to shout out April.
Yes.
For the review. And you can leave us a review and screenshot it. Okay, I should say leave a 5-star review because obviously
don't be mean.
I mean, if you don't leave a 5-star review, it's not really helpful. If you leave a 5-star review and screenshot the review and email it to support@modernagentsocialclub.com, we will send you a free little gift in the mail. So make sure you include your shipping address in the email. And if you forgot what I just said, and you're driving or whatever, it's in the show notes. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the episode, it shows you where to email, what to do, and a reminder to include your shipping address.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Okay, so a funny Valentine's Day story. So Brett and I met, and started dating like in December, okay? And I was 23, so we were pretty young, and like we're pretty like old school, pretty old fashioned. And so both of us had, without even knowing each other yet, we had both committed to not telling someone else that we love them until we knew we were going to marry them, okay? So like old school, okay? So I had never told anyone I loved them. Yes, he had never told anyone that he loved her. And so it was just funny because by the time that like Valentine's Day rolled around, we both had already talked about like getting married. Like we knew that was coming up, but he still had not told me that he loved me. And I was like, I was not going to say it first. So I think it was Valentine's Day, maybe the day before, but he had come over to my house, and I think I was still like a hairstylist at the time, so I was coming home from work. He had come in and he had set up this whole thing in my room of like all of my favorite things, and put like my favorite like drinks and candies and like a new sweatshirt, all of these things all over, okay? But on this pile was this card, okay? I still have this card.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, oh my gosh, how is he going to get me a Valentine's Day card and not tell me that he loves me, but also like predictable for
Like, what is it going to say? Like,
what could it possibly say?
XOXO.
Right, exactly. So I laughed. So this is the front of the card, and for those not watching, it's just a bunch of like little penguins, and they like give each other a kiss, and one's like falling over. The inside of the card just says, "You make me melt," and he put like a bunch of things that he loved about me. He didn't use the word love. He said like, "Here's all your favorite things for Valentine's Day, and here are my favorites about you." And I won't get cheesy on you, but guys, I read this card, and I remember standing in my room reading it, thinking to myself, how long did you search for a card before you found one that didn't say love in it? Like, you went significantly out of your way to do things your own way because you were stubborn enough. And the funny thing is, it was 1 week later that he finally told me that he loved me.
That is hilarious.
That's so funny.
I feel like it's one of those moments where you're like, don't even get me a card then. Like, yeah. This is such a disappointment. I'd rather not have a card at all.
I just like pictured him in the store being like, nope, can't do that one. Can't do that one. And I'm like, what's the point? At least I just write it on a letter or something. But so I bring that up today though for a reason. And it's because today we're talking about like what modern agents actually post and how they show up. And of course they do things differently. And the truth is, if you want to be different, if you want to do things your own way, if you're going to be stubborn enough to not blend in with the rest of the industry or the hallmark industry of Valentine's Day, you have to be committed to doing things differently. And it might mean a little bit of work on the back end, but once you kind of find your groove, you'll find your way. How is that for a tie-in?
That is perfect. I was trying to find a tie-in for my McDonald's and Scribe wine, and I couldn't. But the only thing I can think of is like, it's not your traditional Valentine's Day, and you don't have to do something grand or elaborate or fancy to have a really good Valentine's Day. And the same is true with social media. So I want to tell everyone why we're recording this episode. So actually, our plan today for the week of Valentine's Day was to have an episode come out about email marketing and have it be like love letters to your database, something along those lines. And yesterday, we were both talking back and forth on Slack, which is partly why this podcast started. And all of a sudden, Kayla's like, I'll save that for a podcast. And I was like, well, what if we just do tomorrow's podcast as what we've been talking about back and forth today and like save email for later? Because that's like what we're all fired up about. And so really what it comes down to, and the way I would describe it, maybe yours would be different, but is like using content as a crutch. So are you relying on content to build your brand for you? Or are you relying on content to get the messages across that you want to your sphere, to your community? Or how can we kind of stop doing that and instead show up as our favorite creators to follow on Instagram? Our favorite, like we all probably have, or you all probably have a favorite real estate agent that you follow that you're like, oh, I wish my content was as good as theirs. Or I wish I could show up that confidently. Or I wish I could get my face on camera like that. I wish I could do X, Y, Z. But then we like revert back to, well, I need a graphic for that. Or I need like a carousel post that I can share that will talk about that topic. When really, as Kayla and I were talking yesterday about this whole thing to kind of bring this together, is when you can just use your own stories and your own life experience and bring it to life, whether it's in an Instagram story, in a reel, in a post, and make it about your own perspective, your own experience, your own client takeaway, client question, it's so much more powerful. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, we have to do the episode on this because we need to share this message.
Yeah, it's all about like reframing our mindset around content. And I think what happens is like whatever endeavor you're on, whether it's for real estate or anything else that you'd want to do, the world is the internet's our oyster, right? Like we can log into Etsy, we can log on to Instagram, we can scroll for inspiration, and we can find other creators who create templates for us. And it's easy and it's fun. And I did all of those same things as an agent too. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why I joined Modern Agent was so that I could have the content. And it makes showing up easier, and it's really nice not to start a Canva template with a blank template, but it's nice to have something. And then if you want to change it, like that's all great. But a lot of things have, first of all, changed in marketing in the last 4 or 5 years. And it it's critical now, if we want to stand out, that we have to do things in a way that actually connects with people and encourages them to engage with us. Otherwise, they're going to see our stuff, and even if it's a beautiful graphic or a beautiful photo of you, they're going to just keep scrolling, because it's not going to, their brain is like hardwired to ask themselves, what is in it for me? And if there's nothing in it for them, they just keep scrolling.
I feel like if you think about social media as, why would you want someone to come and find you and want to click follow and want to stay? Like, that's our goal for you, is for you to be that account for people in your community, for your sphere. Not where they're going to like it to be nice because they're supporting you, but it's not really valuable to them, or there's not really anything in it to them. Like, how do you become this real estate agent who's creating content that is super desirable to consume? And one example that we talked about in our Slack messages yesterday was talking about, if you wanted to, I'm just going to give this example now and we can deep dive along as we go. If you wanted to talk more about new construction on social media, rather than having like a generic graphic that talks about why buy new construction, it would be so much more powerful if you shared, like, maybe you think about, who's my ideal client? Maybe their price point is, it's a move up buyer. They're going to look in like the $700 to $850 price range. So you come up with your local builders who are in that price point. Maybe they're custom, maybe they're not. And you share and highlight your local builders, and maybe you do a tour of a model home every week of those different builders. And you have some kind of a resource, like, or a call to action. Hey, if you want to get a list of all the local builders in this price point and area, comment builder and I'll send you my free list. Like, something like that makes so much more sense, where someone's going to see it and think, okay, that's super helpful. Or another example is, my husband and I, we bought, when we bought our farm, it was such a different process than buying a house, because there was like land, like testing of the land and blah, 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 especially if you're going to build all those things. And I was thinking to myself, as we're having this conversation about content that feels more like it's personal advice than it is just like a graphic stating like what to do if you want to buy land. And I thought, if I, like, in that time period, or even before, if I came across if I wanted to learn more about how to buy this piece of land and how to know what to look for, I'm not going to hope that I stumble across a graphic about how to buy land. I'm going to hope that the real estate agent who I know, like, and trust, when I reach out to them, will either guide me in the right direction or provide the info that I need, and that's who I'm going to reach out to. But in order for that to happen, that person needs to be top of mind with me. Mm-hmm. So instead of thinking like, oh, I need a graphic about a land purchase, or I need a graphic about new construction, I need a carousel that tells this, like, that's not necessarily going to resonate. But if you are that person that someone trusts and they know they can come to you for that, that's one really good way to think about how you're showing up on social media. Like, will I be their only option when they do have that question about buying land? Will I be their only option when they are looking into new construction? And will they, will they know that I can support them somehow? Like, it's more about being there as a resource for people than like, word vomiting all this information about how to buy a house, how to buy a new construction home, how to buy land. And I just think that mind shift can really help you show up a lot more powerfully in a way that makes people like think, oh my gosh, I really like her. She's the only person I'm going to go to if I have a question about this thing.
All of this reminds me of back in my days when I was a hairstylist. I did hair full time for like 12 years before I cut back. And of course I used social media, but I used it way differently than what I would now. But I look back to what I used to share. So I worked in this like really cute little like small town shop, okay? And the front of the shop was like a barber shop. The back of it was like the actual salon. It was not fancy. It was not aesthetic, but it was just like charming, and everybody knew everyone when they walked in those doors, okay? So what I used to do is I used to snap photos of like when I would get to work and have my station, and I would have like my products sitting there. I would have the drink that I brought in, and we had a really cute like popcorn machine, and we would let our clients get free popcorn. And I would literally like grab a bag of popcorn, set it down on my station, and be like, your bowl's waiting for you. Like, give me a call. And just doing those little things was so powerful. And it made me, even as a new stylist and as someone in a small town, I mean, I was booked out all the time. And I look at that and I think like, sharing content like that today is what would move the needle for me. Not educational content where I'm teaching my clients how I can take them from level 1 to level 5 on hair color, if you even know what that means. Like, what I can do is I can explain to people like, hey, here's how I got this client from this, dark auburn to this bright platinum blonde. And I, did it in 3 steps. And I can share some of those things behind the scenes, but what they actually care about is like what she's sipping on and what we're talking about and what we're watching on TV and listening to and all of those things. Like, it's more about the experience than the topics at hand. And I think if agents applied that same mentality to their social media, like, they'd be surprised at the results.
One of our members just sent me a voice message, and I wish I could play part of it. I should have asked her permission. But she basically was saying, like, you're so right about how you should make the real estate stuff a little bit more subliminal. So talking about, like, a subliminal hook and a subliminal whatever, like, where you're setting something down. You're doing it, and you're talking about it, but it's not so, like, billboard style. It's like, while I did this, or I got this coffee on the way to show house, I got whatever. Like, you're dripping it in, and I think that makes a lot more sense if you want to have content that people are always enjoying consuming. Another example of that would be for you as a hairstylist. Like, you could have gone on your stories and said, my client really wanted to go from brunette to blonde, but to keep her hair, from, I don't know, getting damaged, we had to do it slowly, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I recommend if you're wanting to go from brunette to blonde. And, like, a takeaway. So another thing that I think would be really helpful, and we do this all the time ourselves on the Modern Agent Instagram, on our Instagram, is if you have a really good question from a client, if people are asking you about the same things over and over and over, don't feel like you can't talk about that on Instagram. Like education isn't bad. I think we think about education and like, oh, we want people to know about this one thing, and we think it has to be in a graphic. Like, it has to be this very bold, blunt statement. But like, a way more powerful way to educate is through storytelling. So if you get that question all the time, if you get that really great question that you're like, this is something I think a lot of people should know the answer to, that was a great question, and you get on your stories and you share like, hey, I was showing my buyer a house today and she asked me blah, 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 and here's what I told her. Here was the advice I gave her. And even if you're not looking to buy or sell, that information feels more enjoyable to consume because it feels a lot more digestible. And it's kind of like when you watch the reality real estate TV shows. It's just interesting. It's entertaining. Like, what questions are people asking about real estate? What would you give them advice about? What would your answer be? So I think kind of like shifting that into, it's not like we can't educate. It's maybe shifting the way that we do educate. And, yesterday in our conversations, not to keep bringing this up, but we were saying like, there's a difference, I think, maybe between like when to do something as a reel, when to do something as a story, when to do something as a graphic / carousel. There's so many different options. And I think that is partially why people feel like, oh, well, I maybe want to have this more billboard style piece of content to talk about this.
Like, we think that people want to know like certain things about the process, but what they really want to know is if they can trust you. And so if we can keep that in mind, not that we don't share insight on the market, not that we don't share insight on, yes, you can hire a realtor and have a realtor represent you when you're working with a builder. And, you can, like, you have options as these things as a seller, and here's things that you can negotiate. Yes, they need to know those things, and they need to know that you understand those things, but they don't need an informational graphic. They don't need something that you would have seen in real estate school to learn that. They just need to hear it from you. And even if it's just little nuggets here and there, even if it's once or twice a week where you're getting on your stories or getting on your reels and sharing a tidbit of information, that's going to tell them, like, the story that's going to tell them is, she could help me. Like, I can trust her.
I have to say one thing really quick. Adam Mosseri, he's the head of Instagram, just released a video this week and said, like, the future of Instagram, where we're going, blah, blah, blah. He always, like, I always say, like, you don't have to worry about trying to figure out the algorithm. Like, they're telling you exactly what they want you to do. And basically, to sum it up, I'll link the video in the show notes that he posted. But he said they're focused on rewarding originality. He said creativity at first. Then he said that basically means originality and building relationships. So social interactions, more DMs, more conversation. And I'm like, boom. Like, this is amazing.
It's almost like that's what we've been talking about.
Right. But it's always what Instagram has been about at the same time. Always. And I think, we can get frustrated with Instagram 100%. I also have been at times. But I think if we go back down to the basics of like, why was the app created to begin with? It was created for people to have social connections and obviously to showcase like, who am I? It wasn't created for everyone to post the same things or to post, things that you can find in a textbook or whatever. It was created to be social. And so when we think about like, if you ask yourself right now, who is your favorite, who is a real estate agent that you follow and look up to? And I want you to go look them up and write down what they're doing. Just write it down. And I don't want you to copy them. I don't want you to do anything like that, but write it down. And then I want you to think about what those things are. Is their face in a lot of content? Is there behind the scenes of their life in their content? Are they active on their stories every day? Do you feel like you know them? Do you feel like that you could sit down and have a cup of coffee with them and like you would already know that like who they are before you even sat down? Do you wish that you could be on camera and confident like they are? Like what are those pieces? Because I really think if we can look into like our own user behavior as why something's working, like I feel like half of what I've built my business on is like reverse engineering things. Like how did like this person get people to sign up for this program? And I'm like, okay, well, here's the content they put out for it. It wasn't in their feed. It was in their story. So then I'm like, okay, ding, ding. Like stories are a great place for converting. Or like just always looking at the way people are doing things is such an easy way to kind of think, how could this work for me? Versus, thinking I need a post for everything. And I think people do really start to use content as a crutch. Like I want more content. I even put on our stories a poll saying like, what do you want more of this year? And it was like content ideas was the winning answer. And I feel like that's obviously you need content ideas. It gives you that, it gets the ball rolling, but instead of just constantly having more and more and more ideas, find one that you enjoy doing, find one that like kind of works for you, that you are part of personally, and put it on repeat. Like we actually have a brand new free resource called Trending Content Ideas for Real Estate Agents. It's a 2025 edition, and we had one last year. We came out with our 2025, and there's 20-ish ideas for a signature series idea. So like that kind of thing that you put on repeat. Because I think that when you look at your real estate agents you admire, they probably do the similar things over and over and over again.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I would want to almost challenge myself. Like, what if I spent the next like 3 months only posting like 4 different types of content and like actually stuck with it? And I think that you would see results. I took a few notes yesterday. I was going through actually some agents in like my market and around my market. And I was like taking notes of what kind of things that they were posting. And then I like compared it to the kind of thing that we tell modern agents to post. So some of the things that people in my market post are just sold signs with their clients like in front of a house. Family photos, their accomplishments, graphics with education, client testimonials. I put random photos of their kids because sometimes they just kind of feel out of place. And then they're like remaking like trending reels. Okay. Now, my opinion, none of those things are bad. Like, it's not like any one of those things are like, no, don't ever do that again. It's not a matter of that. But let's compare that to what modern agents post. Okay. And I've got a ton of notes and even like some specific examples of things that people can do if you want to go back into those later. But one of the things that modern agents post is their view, like their point of view, how they helped their clients, their local community, like local content beyond local events, more than just real estate. And the real estate content that they have, they're like sprinkling it in. It's not the headliner of that specific post. It is always sprinkled in. And then stories that are like engaging and building community, building relationships, asking questions, asking opinions. But like the client or the agents that I enjoy following, where I see them putting these things into practice, like their results are unhinged, and you can tell they have a community of people who like look forward to their next post and love engaging with them because they love having that relationship with them.
What all that has in common is they're sharing like their life as they're living it. And I think that can sound really challenging sometimes, but I even do this with myself. So we were writing copy for our new website, and I was saying something, and I was on Zoom with you and Mark, my husband, and I was trying to figure out how to say it. And I was like, no, I should just say it how I would say it out loud. Like, I don't need to come up with some fancy way of saying it or some whatever. Like, think to yourself, if you were going to tell your friend a story about your client, why they bought their house, or something that happened along the way, or a hurdle, or a success story, or whatever, how would you just say it to a friend? Like, don't try to get fancy. Don't try to get like overly creative. It's really, you want it to be easy to digest for like a consumer, but at the same time, like, it doesn't need to be like, the fancier we make it, the harder it is to read. You want to almost read it as if like you were emailing this to your friend, or you were saying it on a voice message.
Yeah.
You can even practice that way. Like, I voice message people all the time as like a means of communication. And I heard this tip somewhere that said, like, if you aren't sure like what you want to say in a reel, just say it in your voice messages and like listen to it back and think like, did that sound like me? Did it sound too like curated? So that can be a good tip. But I think it's a hard like thing, because Instagram, you think, okay, I need to create something. But at the same time, the more powerful content is going to come from just like a regular story. Not even like sometimes when I see people doing Instagram trends, and I'm guilty of this, like, no one's perfect. And I'm not saying anyone's doing anything wrong by any means, but like, it just sometimes feels like super random or not aligned, or like, that makes no sense. And not that you have to post all real estate. That's not what I mean. But I think sometimes we are so not ourselves because we're trying to follow what we think we should be doing instead of just like talking the way we would talk to our clients, talking the way we would talk to a friend. I always said when I was selling real estate, I give the same advice that I would give my mom, dad, or best friend. That's like my little slogan that I always use. And I think it helped me show up more authentically and talk more authentically and confidently. Because if you're talking to your best friend or your mom or your dad, you're not going to feel that like as much imposter syndrome with what you're doing, right? And I think that just like helps set up my mind for like, that's kind of how I should talk to every client. And the same is true for social media. Like, I should talk in that same voice or way. Should we talk about the Modern Agent content cocktail real quick?
Yes.
Okay, so this is part of Modern Agent. It's the way we teach how to create your content. Because you might be thinking like, well, what is posting local content going to do to build my real estate business? And like, you can do this a million ways. So there's not a right way or a wrong way, but this cocktail can help you make sure that regardless of what you're posting, it's going to be intentional in some way. So the cocktail is 4 ingredients. It's 1 part location, 1 part real estate, a splash of personality, which in that same idea of personality, it can be as simple as saying like, I'm showing houses with my Diet Coke. I brought XYZ to my closing. Something so simple. Or it can speak to your ideal client. So if you are speaking to other moms of young kids, if you're speaking to other like local entrepreneurs, like, it could be something that resonates with that too. So it could be like just think of like brand menu, splash of personality, basically just inserting something into your content that is you. So instead of just saying like, looking at houses in this neighborhood this weekend, that's even good because it's specific to location, but like adding in like, I'm bringing coffee from Roots on my way, or I'm wearing pink as always, or I have my lipstick on and I'm ready to show houses for the day. I don't know, just like one teeny little insert. And then the last thing is garnish with a strategic call to action and or a mini bio. So I'll talk about that in a second. But 1 part location, no matter what you are posting about, add in the location. So don't just say, here's what I would do if I was selling my home this year. Here's what I would do if I was selling my area name home this year. That could be a great reel. It could be a great carousel, either one. And literally giving your advice, it sounds like it's coming from you, of what you would do if you were selling your home this year. 1 part real estate. So let's say you're posting something local and you're posting like what to do on girls' night in city name. Instead of that, you switch it to here's what I'm doing on girls' night in city name as a local real estate agent. So you're subliminally adding in the real estate agent. And then you could even add something funny like, after showing houses in blah, 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 I booked massages at this place, and then we're going to go get lunch and drinks at this place. Like, so you're infusing the real estate in, if it's more or more like local or more personal, you're infusing the location in regardless. And then you're infusing your personality in when it's real estate. So if it's 1 part real estate, or if it's more of a personal post, like what I just said, or it's maybe like you're doing a photo dump carousel of like life lately. It could be like my recent camera roll as a city name real estate agent. Like, it's that subtle drip, subtle drip, subtle drip. That way, if you are sharing about your family, you're sharing about your kids, you're sharing about something, it still makes sense in some way, when it ties back into you being an agent. Because sometimes I think when you talk about like posting personal, people think, well, that's not going to grow my business. Like that's not going to get me business. And then the strategic call to action. So I just made this reel as an example, and I'm going to post it as a reel. So when this episode comes out, I will link it. But in the reel, I did auditioning to be your city name real estate agent. Mm-hmm. And I did a mix of content from like what I do in the morning. I go on a walk with my family and get coffee, to what I'm doing for my listings. I go capture content of my listings one day a week, to showing houses, and then I bring coffee for the clients, to getting my clients a pub sub on closing day. This is a fake reel, as me pretending to be an agent in Rosemary Beach. So anyways, but I dripped all these things in there. And then I had in the middle of it, when I was saying showing houses, I put a text that popped up that said, comment house or something if you want a list of homes for sale in this area.
Yeah.
So there's like the strategy insert. Like it's kind of a behind the scenes, what it's like to work with me as an agent, but now I'm popping in something strategic. So in that context, I had local, I had real estate, I had personal, and I had a call to action. And really, it's when you get in the habit of doing it, it becomes so easy and natural. And you could you could post behind the scenes of your life every day as a post, but have a call to action that shows something about real estate, and you could grow your business that way. Like, yeah, there's so many things. And then kind of switching back to the whole, like, when to post what, if I did that day in the life style piece of content, or like that, I'm auditioning to be your agent, it's kind of just a funny trend. And then what I would do to make that so easy, where I got all my clips from, was from old stories. Mm-hmm. So if you intentionally think to yourself, okay, next Tuesday, I'm going to post a day in the life. I'm going to tell my Instagram followers, come along with me for behind the scenes of real estate in city name with my Diet Coke. There you got all the things. And you're going to post throughout the day different little pieces. So what you're doing in the morning, maybe you're dropping your kid off at school, you walk your dogs, you do yoga, whatever. Then you're going to get to the next part of your day where you're doing something real estate. So going to the office, going to one of your listings, going to get content, going to whatever. And you're doing this in your stories. Save all the clips, and now you have a reel.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And that's where I think people have always overthought it. And it's like, again, get in the practice of documenting, and you're going to have so much like content at your fingertips. So the whole reel is like the whole cocktail thing, which is funny because I actually have one of our stickers here where it has like all of those little parts on it. So you can see like every part of the cocktail. And not that every single piece of content is going to have every single part, like ingredient in that cocktail. But when you start purposely at least mixing 2 at a time with every post, I think you're just going to find that your content, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck for it. And it's going to be more of a needle mover in your business.
It's 2 birds with 1 stone.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be either or. And I think, one of the things that people talk about a lot on Instagram is like your pillars, right? Like have your 4 pillars, have one real estate. I've even taught this. But really, you can still kind of have that be like your focal point to give you some type of a structure, a framework, so you know what to post when, and kind of have like a plan, right? Mm-hmm. But when you kind of mix them together, each post now operates in multiple ways. Like if I just saw a house tour, like those are great. Like I feel like people are like, let's, do this for our listings and that will look good to our sellers. Like, but what's going to get the listing more attention? If it's just the listing and no one, like, what if the house is like not cute, not well decorated, blah layout, blah, blah, blah. But if you add yourself into it, you bring those personal touch points, you make it not just about the house, because again, you're not going to sell that house probably on Instagram, but you can bring attention to it and you can bring attention to your business. Yeah. So again, 2 birds with 1 stone. You are marketing your listing for your seller, but it's not this like dry, like generic listing video. It has personality. Yeah. Another one I saw recently that I can link, it was something like, spend the morning with me at my listing in city name with my kids or something. Yeah. And so like she took her kids to her listing to hang out for the morning and captured content there. Like, if you want your sellers to think you are working hard, like doing things like this and then showing them the power of how many people you're reaching through that versus like putting their home in MLS and calling it a day, like that is going to be so memorable. That is going to be so like out of the box from every agent out there. Like most agents are not doing this. Maybe it feels like it on Instagram, but most agents are not. And it will just, I think that alone can get you more business. Like doing something so simple like that. Like I put in that fake reel that I made, or not fake reel, in the reel that was of me pretending to be a realtor, that I went to take content of my listings every Tuesday. That's a great strategy. If you have listings and they're sitting longer now, pick one morning a week and go capture content at them. Even if you're not going inside, it could be like, here's the drive to get there. Here's the backyard. Here's the front porch. Here's where I would blah, blah, blah. Like, here's what's nearby. Like, there's so many things you can like take to social media that are just things you should be doing anyways that could become content.
Yeah. And I think all of those things, like as I'm thinking about how talking to a seller and trying to convince them that showing your outfit of the day inside their home is going to be more powerful than a beautiful tour video. I think it takes some real guts and some real confidence to just look at them in the eye and be like, I know what I'm doing. And I think that's what we understand that can feel tricky. We understand it can feel easier to just do the traditional, beautiful, professionally done tour video and all of those things. And let's be honest, if the house is like beautiful or like amazing, that's going to work. But for the average house, for the average seller, their house is not necessarily show-stopping. Getting a little bit more creative and doing that. And I feel like that's where our hearts are. Like you and I want to help agents understand these strategies and have the confidence to be able to create them so that they can look their seller in the eye and be like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And as they start doing that, like once you get a few under your belt, I feel like that does build confidence and people start to see how that works, because at some point in time, you're going to have a magnetic brand people are obsessed with. You're going to have a social media account with reels and carousel posts and all of that people actually engage with and connect with and are excited about. And you're going to get more business from all of this. And as those things start to happen, sellers are going to look at you and be like, she knows what she's doing. Like, do whatever you want. I trust you, But I do think in the beginning, it does require a little bit of extra confidence. And I'm hoping that episodes like this build that confidence in agents and help them see that, like, they do have what it takes. They do know what they're doing, even if other agents in their market aren't doing it, which is probably like the best reason to do it, right?
Exactly. That's so funny to say, do whatever you want. I trust you. That is literally the reason why we are teaching personal branding. Like that is the exact reason. It's not to have a fluffy Instagram or to be an influencer or whatever people think. Like, who cares what people think? Also, let me insert this here. Read Mel Robbins' book, Let Them. If you struggle at all, or look her up on Apple Podcasts and pick one of the million podcast episodes she's been on recently, and she'll tell you all about this Let Them theory. If you have any kind of fear of showing up because of what people will think or say, please read that book. It is so good, and it's just like the most powerful thought and way of thinking about how you're approaching your business. I also just saw a reel yesterday. It said a creator will never judge someone for creating content in public. Yeah. An athlete will never judge someone for working out. What were the other ones? They were so good.
Yes, I saw that.
I shared it to my stories.
Yep. So good.
So
it is true.
Don't let that hold you back.
Yeah, it's getting your mind in the right place. And yeah, that's what, again, we're hoping this will do. Can I give some specific examples of things that I think people could do?
Yes.
That kind of fall under all of these categories of what modern agents post. And most of these ideas came straight from the content that we create for our members. So our members receive fresh new content every month. We always say the posts and everything that we give them is 90% done, but it's plug and play. So they have to kind of add their little twists that make it more powerful. So that's what some of these hooks are coming from. So as far as sharing your viewpoint and sharing how you've helped your clients, a couple ideas is what my city name buyers really want in a home. So instead of saying sellers do these things, it's hey, this is what my buyers are saying. Check this out. This was one from February, but it said, I asked my client this question 3 months ago, and now she's hosting Valentine's Day brunch in her new home with all her best friends. And the question in there was about check out a local lender and just see what they say, Another idea is like sharing like screenshots of like text messages or DMs from clients, or just people who have like asked you questions, even if it's a friend, just being like, hey, what's this house worth? Or like, is this, is that a good deal on this property or whatever? Sharing those things like paints you as the expert, and it paints the picture in their minds that like, hey, people go to you for questions. People go to you for real estate. And then the other idea was like, as you're out with clients, as you are grabbing lunch with them or whatever, like just snapping pictures of those and incorporating those in your marketing. Those are all great ways to like share your perspective and share your viewpoint and help them like get to know you a little bit more.
Those are also just like what you just said about local content and stuff. It's conversation starters. So it might feel really weird or silly or like, why am I doing this, to share your outfit of the day or what you're drinking, what you're eating, where you're going locally, but people are going to say things back to you from that. And that's how you build the relationships. And back to what Instagram is telling us is working. It's conversations, relationships, a focal point on that, and originality. So no one else can capture local content like you because they're not doing the exact same thing you're doing. And here's a rule of thumb. I gave this in our member training last week. I said, here's a rule of thumb for creating content. If you are not personally in it in some way, so like even if it's not your face smiling at the camera, but like you're not in the post in some way. So maybe it's a reel and you're doing clips of behind the scenes stuff, then have a voiceover with your voice. Mm-hmm. And if your voice isn't in it, then make sure you are in it. So like vice versa, pick one. Either have your voice be part of it or have your body be in it in some way, or your face to cam or something. And that makes every piece of content unique to you, versus if it's just pictures of your local community, that's great, but it could almost feel like local blogger, like then more so than like, here's the agent it's coming from, Yeah. So pick one and alternate between those. Like you don't have to have every single post be a reel, but you don't have to have every single post have your voice in it or face. But if you can alternate through those, and really it's about like creating less content, but better content.
Yes.
And to get there, I kind of think, so this is kind of contradictory. To get there, it requires posting a lot of content because you need to get the creative muscles working, get the like getting, used to taking pictures like that. So like at first it might feel like you are outputting a lot of content, and then you kind of get in your groove and you're like, here's my plan now. Here's what I'm going to do now. And then it becomes a lot more simple and you're a lot better at it and faster at it, but you're only posting stuff that like, you're not worried about posting all the things. You're kind of honed in on like, here's what my plan is. Here's what's going to work for me personally.
Yeah, I love that. Speaking of which, though, when you mentioned like local, so like things to post other than just like pictures of your local community or like events that are going on, especially for the month of February, we had a post on like a series idea in the content this month called Vlogentine's Day, where we're encouraging people to like share different aspects of like life in their town through reels. And so we talked about like, go get your nails done and like document it and like show people where you get that done, or go shopping, go pick up flowers, go get a massage, like all of those things. And again, like these things might not be part of your typical day, but I think that it is an investment in your business to partake in your local community and like get involved, romanticize your life a little bit. Like those are like, I would argue those are like business expenses. A CPA might disagree with me, but when you are like painting the picture of what it's like to live in your town and what it's like to work with you and like your personality through a fun series called Vlogentine's Day, which doesn't have to end after Valentine's Day. I would do it for the whole month of February, but like challenge yourself to create like 3 or 4 reels where you're just like documenting like romanticized moments in your town. And like, I guarantee you will get traction and like attention in your community.
You could even do like romanticizing life in city name.
Yeah.
With local content too, this is so crazy. I feel like, and I'm not even really anymore capturing local content to grow my business, but I just keep doing it because I like to support our local businesses. I feel like so many people and places I go to and support in my town know who I am. And it's so powerful. Like I'm signed up for a yoga program. She does like an online yoga thing, and her name's Emily, and the program's called Healing Gracefully. I love her. I've taken in-person yoga classes with her. As I'm like watching her online, I'm like, I know her. I was just thinking this morning. I'm like, I know her and she knows me. And that's so cool to support a local business who has an online business. She's not like a brick and mortar. She doesn't have her own yoga studio. It's an online business, but she's local. And I'm like, that is like the coolest thing ever. Or yesterday I went to our local like smoothie juice bar, and the girl there knows me. She's like, where's your little one or whatever. And it's like, it's such a cool feeling. And part of the reason that is because, well, I go to all these places all the time, but because I share them on Instagram and I tag them. And they're like probably insanely thankful that I do that. They all reshare it. They always message me on Instagram when I do it. Like, I'm building relationships with all these local businesses, and I'm like, I just want to get my real estate license again, just to show people like for a year how, like, whatever. But I already have done that, so I'm done with that. But anyways, if you think of it from, I think the point of, I just want to support them. Yeah. But you know that at the same time, you're doing these things anyways, like simply document it, like, but you're doing it to support other businesses. And that's going to come back to you just like it does in anything in life, right? Like, it's such a cool way to give back to your community. And even for anyone who says like, I'm a homebody or I don't do a lot of local stuff, like my yoga class is online, but she's from here. Like, she had like an in-person thing at another venue that I was at, and that's how I met her. And now like we chat on Instagram. Like, so it doesn't have to be like you're physically having to leave all the time, but that does help because they see your face. Like, I go into, my favorite boutiques, Homebody and Frey, and they know who I am. They talk to me. We have conversations, like we catch up, like they know Henry's name, like everything. It's just such a cool thing. And it makes you feel such a stronger part of your community and where you live. And I think it's the best feeling ever. Yeah. But then it organically turns into business.
Yeah. Yep. I love all of that. Okay. So I feel like our closing thoughts to summarize all of this is basically when you really look at the agents that you admire, that you follow, that you aspire to be like.
The agents you love.
The agents you love. 99% of them aren't posting educational graphics. So it's time for us to rethink content. Not that there's not a place for any of those, but we need to rethink how we show up.
I think we could do a whole episode, honestly, on educational content and ideas. Like, I gave a couple today, but just ideas of how to do it in a way that feels like you're just sharing advice with a friend versus like, here's my curated carousel of it, Yep. I think that'd be let us know if that sounds desirable to you for us to dive deeper into that specific topic and go through examples. Even like the examples you gave of the content, I'm thinking in my head, like, you could take that content about like now she's hosting Galentine's Day and you could word that 100 different ways depending on who your ideal client is. It wouldn't even have to say Galentine's Day. Like it's just like it's a framework, right? It's the framework of what the point of the post is to show the after story of your client.
Yep.
And you could put someone who wanted to downsize, someone who wanted to build, someone who wanted to sell, someone who wanted to move up to a bigger house. You can use that same framework and pop those things in there. We do this with our members all the time, I feel like, with like these examples. But just to not like put yourself in a box of like, that post doesn't relate to me because I don't have a client who got in their house for Galentine's Day. Yeah. Maybe they are, I don't know, like maybe they're starting their home search as their way to have self-love for themselves in the month of February. You could do so many things, right? It's like having the framework or the jumping off point of like, why would I create this piece of content? Oh, because that's going to show someone what's possible for them.
Yeah. I love that. Well, maybe that can be like the homework for them this week is to like take one of the post suggestions that we talked about and make it work for them. Like literally just to pick one and write it down on a piece of paper, tweak the wording a little bit, make it make sense for you, for your market, for your brand, and then like play with it. Now keep in mind, posting something like this one time is not going to change the entire trajectory of your business. Okay? It's like, it's flexing that muscle, like you said. It's doing it over and over and over again. And then it's looking back and figuring out like what resonated, what didn't, asking yourself those questions. But get in the habit of it, like making it a priority. But like start with one. Start today. Start with one thing. And then maybe listen to this episode again in like 2 weeks and challenge yourself to do another one.
I would even love to turn one of our Marketing Therapy Thursdays into tell us an agent you love to follow, and I'll tell you why you love to follow them and give you some ideas for yourself. Like, because we don't need to copy what they're doing, but we can be inspired by it and come up with our own version of it. So I think that could be a really fun activity.
Absolutely. Chelsea, happy Valentine's Day. I hope
happy Valentine's Day. Yes, you too. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. We'll see you next Tuesday. I'm so glad we got to hang out today. If you're as sad as I am that our time is up, I've got good news. There are a couple of different ways we can keep the conversation going.
First, follow us on Instagram at Modern Agent Marketing Girls and introduce yourself in the DMs. Also, we always have a free Modern Agent resource available, so check out today's show notes for the goods.
And finally, hang out with other go-to real estate girls like you and finally create a marketing plan that works when you join Modern Agent Social Club. All the details are in today's notes.
XOXO, the Marketing Girls.